All right. Hello, everyone. This is Sandy coming at you live from the People's Congregation of Shakers and Movers. And I'm very, very, very excited for this show today. I have a very special guest with me. Her name is Andrea Shuman, and she is the founder of Mycrodrops. This show today is sponsored by Irie Bliss Wellness, where coincidentally you can purchase the Mycrodrops. And we have an active coupon right now, Shroom10, to get $10 off, and you can use that multiple times in the same order. So if you want to order all 6, you can use coupon 6 times. We just wanted to also remind you that this video is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only. The statements made in this video by the guests or by me, the host, are not necessarily the opinions of the entire People's Congregation of Shakers and Movers, the board, the members, or our affiliates. Many of the products discussed on this show have also not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration, and we are not intending to diagnose, treat, or cure anything. How many times have we said that, Andrea? We obviously encourage you to do your own research, and we want to remind you that results may vary. All right, so today, Andrea, we are bringing you to the show because we met serendipitously at an entrepreneurial psychedelic conference. And we, I think, share the same vision about how mushrooms and cannabis can really help support the evolution of our health and our consciousness. Andrea has been in the field of alternative health and healing since 1997 as a body worker, Ayurvedic practitioner, and master herbalist. Andrea has been working with psychedelics since 1995, but professionally since 2018. She has a specialty in women's health and a deep affinity for paradox, blood mysteries, and life transitions. Me too. Andrea has had her own journey into the watery shadows of motherhood and depression and is on a mission to help others reclaim their joy and sense of self-worth. Andrea created Mycrodrops as the first of many offerings to make microdosing more effective and to help empower people, especially women and femmes, to take back their mental health and narrative. Thank you for all your work and everything that you do, Andrea, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, Sandy.
So I know we are both really, really busy moms, and we're both kind of in the thick of the battle today with our kids home from school. So I do appreciate you being flexible, even though you had to hide in your car. I have to say, I have been there. So Andrea, yeah, why don't we just kind of start from the beginning? Tell us a little bit about, why Mycrodrops? What's the inspiration for you creating this amazing brand?
Yeah, well, it was a long time coming. I had another business, and I, like many people, have gone through the experience of trying to run a business while having young children at home, not having enough support, all of the things that are unfortunately just too common in the world where we, especially in the US, where we just don't have quite the support for early childhood and mothering in our communities that we wish we did, or that we would if we lived somewhere else where extended family was prized a little bit more. And so I found myself, trying to run a business 2 states away from where it was operating. Everything was falling apart. Nothing I did seemed to matter. It just was crashing around me, and I was really struggling. I was struggling to do that while teaching my kid how to read and, homeschooling and having a baby that was still nursing. And it was so many different things. And then once I weaned my second little one, I experienced something we don't talk about very often, which is called weaning depression. A lot of people are very familiar with postpartum depression. We put a lot of resources and energy into understanding that. Very few people understand that weaning depression is a thing, or even would recognize its correlation. Because I have a specialty in women's health, I did recognize that. And it didn't really matter, because what was going on is that I had brain fog. I couldn't think of my own herbal formula to save my life, even though I've written a billion for everybody else. I couldn't figure out what I needed to do. All I really wanted to do was curl up and cry. And so instead, luckily, I had a community that was able to help in that I reached out to my naturopath, who's a friend, and she said, you know what, just give me a second. I'm going to get you on an herbal formula so you can think. And
Mm.
so put me on one. And then at the same time, somebody gave me a little tincture bottle of some psychedelic mushroom tincture. It wasn't even very well made. It had gone off. I actually thought it had been done in vinegar, but it wasn't. It was just one that had sort of gone off. Even so, it worked. My one little dose of this tincture clarified my brain enough, and then her herbs that she gave me got me thinking. I just started going, oh, wait a minute, there is a way out of this. I can climb out of this hole that I find myself in. And I got really busy trying to create formulas that were going to work and be supportive long term. Because during my research, I learned, early in the microdosing experience, I didn't know you weren't supposed to microdose every day, because I was new to microdosing. I had macrodosed many, many times. And so I wanted to create a formula that I just enjoyed. And after many hilarious failings and things that tasted terrible and I didn't want to take, I ended up coming up with a very Ayurvedically based formulas that I enjoy and that go into my body every day.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
right. So that's kind of what I like about this product is that it is food. I mean, it's essentially a food-based product. So obviously your past experience as an Ayurvedic healthcare practitioner must have influenced how things were made in sets of 3. Is that is that an assumption that I'm just making?
It is a correct assumption, although I've always had an affinity for the number 3 anyway, even previous to my Ayurvedic experience. Like I just like that number. And so from an Ayurvedic basis, yeah, I created, without getting too deep into Ayurveda, the formulas that answer to the 3 main body types or doshas that you will hear about: Vata, Pitta, and Kapha. And a very quick lesson is Vata is like air and ether element. It's your cold, dry, light feelings. Pitta is your fire, a little bit of water element. It's your heated, sharp, semi-mobile qualities, a little bit strong. And then you've got your kapha, which is your earth and water, your muddy, heavy, sticky qualities, right? Everybody is going to show up with their own mixture of these different qualities. And this shows up both in our body and in our mind. So I created these 3 formulas to balance these things as they come up. So vata often experiences anxiety. Pitta often experiences irritability, and really wants to focus, but needs a healthy focus and not an obsessive focus. Kapha really just struggles getting their butt moving, and wanting to do anything. So these answer to those things, although we all fluctuate through those states throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month.
That's kind of why I like it, because that's what I was saying to somebody when I was explaining it. I was like, our condition changes minute to minute on the inside. Our environment changes depending on how much we, change that. But sometimes we can't change our environment, right? Sometimes we want to motivate to go to yoga and we really want to change our environment, but we need that little like push, to get there. So I kind of want to ask you, well, first off, I think one of the questions that we had talked about asking you was just what inspired you to really take this product to market? Because I mean, it's a pretty challenging, like obviously, you were helping your clients. Now, were you still practicing actively like as an Ayurvedic coach, or are you primarily focusing on your formulations and building the brand at this point?
Primarily focusing on my formulations. I do some one-on-one consulting, but not much anymore. I actually stopped in 2015. Through a whole lot. I used to own an Ayurvedic center, an herbal apothecary. So I had a whole bunch running up to this. I am a straight up herb nerd. So there's not much more that I enjoy than sitting around fuddling with formulations. It's just something that like fills my heart and makes me feel at home. And so honestly, like creating this company was my own therapy. So I created this company because I like working with herbs, because I like solving problems with and working with plants. So that's kind of where I started with it. But I brought it to market because I really think other people need it. I heard a lot of mainly, I guess, to be totally honest with you, I have a real personal passion about people not being drugged when they don't need to be. And that's just my straight up my heart to your heart. I think there's way too many people on psychiatric medications. There's over 75 million people in the United States alone on psychiatric medications. That's 1 in 5 people you come across on your day-to-day basis. That might be you. And there's no shade and no judgment on that. And the pharmaceutical industry has been incredibly predatory, especially towards women when it comes to psychiatric medications. We've basically told them your pain isn't real. Be quiet, take this medicine. It'll take the edge off. And being a child of somebody who's been on psychiatric medication for 30 years, it profoundly affected my relationship with my mother and her ability to connect with herself or even know who herself was. So there wasn't a lot of guidance for me. And I feel like so much of it was this giant block put in between our relationship by the pharmaceutical industry. It's frustrating, and I don't think that so many people should be on these medications, especially given the statistics. So I brought this to market because I really want to give people some alternatives, especially when they're considering going into, I'm not a doctor. I can never and would never tell you to stop your medications in any way, shape, or form. It can be super dangerous to come off them quickly. So I would never tell you that. And that's my disclaimer. I'm not telling you to do that. That being said, if you're considering going on antidepressants, there's 100 million things you need to try first. Most antidepressant prescriptions are given by GPs. They're not given by psychiatrists. They're given without a diagnosis of anything clinical. They come pretty quickly on the heels of, I'm feeling kind of funky, I'm tired, I'm weepy. Nobody's asking them, what time of day do you feel sad? Did anything happen before that? How old are you? Are you 42 years old in the middle of starting perimenopause? Because that has something to do with it. There's a billion conditions, physical conditions, that are not even quote unquote mental health conditions that have depression or anxiety as a side effect. That's just a fact. And putting a antidepressant on top of it is like having chronic headaches and always taking ibuprofen and then never addressing why you're getting the headaches. Right. So yeah.
Right. It's like taking a weight loss diet pill and then eating 10 king size bag of Skittles, like feeding your body sugar or something, right? Like totally holistic what you're doing with the food, which is, I think nutrition is so underrated, which is why I love these products so much. Let's start from kind of the ground up. So your formulas, it's either for kind of like being more grounded, kind of being more focused or being more motivated, or sort of how, I kind of reach for what I need. So if I'm trying to go to yoga, I will go for the microactive. If I'm trying to more sit and write a newsletter, I will go for the that's the focus. So what is that? That's the
microflow.
Microflow, and then micro calm, which would be for me the grounded, which, so let's start with the grounded. Which I think one of the ingredients that we should highlight is ashwagandha in that one. People ask me about it all the time. Andrea, why did you put ashwagandha into this formulation?
Ashwagandha has become kind of a really well-known adaptogen, and for its primary use as a stress tolerance increaser, let's say. That being said, it's not from an Ayurvedic perspective, that's definitely not its only property. So I put ashwagandha in it because ashwagandha is a root. It's a root of the winter cherry plant related to the tomato. And you'll notice that the entire grounded series, it has just roots in it. That's what it is. So it's got ashwagandha and kava and yukino. They're all roots. The reason is that it brings you down to your feet. Vata, that sort of nervous energy, that anxiety energy. It's like being a balloon that's kind of floating above your head. And this formula helps to bring the string down. So ashwagandha is really well known for strengthening the reproductive system. And we can ask, what does this have to do with anxiety? And this really comes from the Ayurvedic perspective that just before you get to the reproductive system, when you go through the tissues in the body, you hit the nervous system. So, like, if your reproductive system is fully nourished from an Ayurvedic perspective, automatically all the tissues that come before it, which is all of them, are more grounded, more healthy, and more receptive. The thing about ashwagandha that people don't understand is that more isn't necessarily better. It does have an effect on the thyroid in smaller proportions and smaller amounts. It's a really positive effect to balance the thyroid. When you overdo ashwagandha, it can be too much on the thyroid. It can even be like a little too heating and aggravating. So we have ashwagandha in there in a balanced formula rather than just on its own. It's very rare for herbs to be given on their own in Ayurvedic medicine.
I love that. And that makes so much sense with the synergy with the kava, because I think of kava as being nootropic, opening the heart, calming the nervous system, focusing the mind, So again, all of the grounded is my favorite for before meditation. Personally, because I have a very hard time sitting still. And this is why, I wanted to give these discounts, because I really think that it should be a system. Because again, we don't necessarily need the same thing at any given moment in the day. So let's talk a little bit about the focused or the micro flow. So again, all of Andrea's formulas either come with CBD or without CBD. So we can get into that, little private consulting. You can always DM me if you have any questions about which formula like we think you should start with. But so the focus, I think rhodiola is one of the stars of that show. You want to tell us a little bit about the breakthrough or the synergistic properties of the focus, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So rhodiola and gotu kola. But let's also not forget that we always put a spice in all of these formulas. The grounded has ginger, and then the microflow has cardamom, because cardamom is a carminative. It's something that it helps to balance the digestive system without heating the body. So this is our kind of heat balancing formula. The microflow having rhodiola, which is a wonderful kind of heat and intensity stress formula. So rhodiola in itself is a more cooling herb, as is gotu kola. So you think of when people are called hot-headed, we want to give them cooling herbs. We don't give them ginger and ashwagandha, both of which are heating. We want to give them gotu kola, this nice cooling green herb, rhodiola, which is a root that is in itself also grounding but cooling. Rhodiola is really good at dealing with chronic headaches. Think of anything that compresses the head or makes you feel like, oh, that kind of intensity-based stress. And gotu kola has been shown in studies to make mice run the maze, I believe, 30% faster than mice that weren't fed gotu kola. So we're talking about also improved concentration, improved memory. Gotu kola has been looked at to prevent Alzheimer's. And I would say rhodiola is just one of my favorite herbs for like, I'm this person, right? I'm the person who, when I go off balance, I'm going to go towards heat-based stress intensity. That's just how I do. I don't go to anxiety hiding. I don't go to like running around and flipping out. I go to like get her done and tunnel through it, and like this is my formula for that. So that it keeps me in perspective. It keeps me from being overreactive to things. So my system just isn't as quickly. If you think about fire, how throwing a little gas-soaked rag at a fire, that can happen when your body and your system are out of balance. So think about the rhodiola and the gotu kola as kind of a wet cloth that can go on that and just cool it down, reduce any of the danger that you might have in overreacting, and bring you back down into your body.
That tends to be the one that I recommend for stay-at-home moms. I'm not going to lie. And then we, of course, have the microactive, or I think the motivate might be my favorite. I've become so accustomed to, I have a new kind of recipe that I do. I actually do full fat coconut milk, the motivate, about 4 to 6 pumps. If I'm going to yoga, definitely 6. If I'm having a little bit of a slower morning, I'll even just do half of that, and then sometimes even mix in some of the focus. And then I have a little hand blender, and sometimes I'll put in a little butter, and then I just blend it all up, and it's like fatty and frothy, and now I don't even need sugar. So that's huge. I have
Yeah.
not been putting sugar in my coffee as an attempt to cut back on sugar. So thank you for that. Because I think the coconut milk just has this like creamy something satisfying. So I don't miss the sugar. But
Yeah.
Motivate, I know one of the stars of the show is True Ginseng. And I know you were really adamant about making sure that when you did the training with my staff that we understood that not all ginseng is created equally, right?
Yeah, they're just different plants, so they have different. I mean, no shade on other types of ginseng. It's just that they have different. They have different attributes.
Mm-hmm.
And ginseng is an interesting one for this formula because ginseng is inherently heating. It is also really like kind of sharp and push through. It's a really good anti-kapha herb. So if you think about being stuck in the mud, this really helps break you loose of that and really get the energy going. But beyond that, because it's Korean ginseng, has a really wonderful affinity for fatigue and hormonal based fatigue.
Mm.
So, especially if we're in our 40s and we're kind of like headed toward those, inside those hormonal changes. I know that those hormonal changes are present in me. So for me, Korean ginseng was a game changer. And I was on that one for a good amount of time. That's why I ended up putting it in the formula, because I know how much it really helped even just instigate the ability to like get up and go and start doing these formulas. It was part of what I took to wake up from my depression. So this is a really good formula for when your mood is just low and you're tired. Either way, you want to get to the gym. You're going to feel better as soon as you get to the gym, but getting there is really hard. That motivated, if you drop some in your coffee or in this lovely concoction that Sandy's talking about, it really does kick your butt. It does not like it when you sit still after you take it. So I'm not going to lie that this formula is not awesome to take and then chill out. It's just not what it's for. So if you got some stuff to do, it's a good to go. We added cinnamon to this formula because true cinnamon. Once again, we distinguish because there's cinnamon, there's cassia cinnamon, and then there's Ceylon true cinnamon. They're different plants. They're just different species to begin with. They do different things. The cinnamon that we put in there, it's very stimulating to the circulatory system, so moves your blood. So we've got the ginseng, which is also doing that. The tulsi, which is just really opening up the lungs as well, helping you to take in more oxygen, like getting you like just really enervated. That's really what its job is to like energize and lift. So they all do a really good job with that. And we didn't mention that the reason that you can switch between these formulas is because they're all on what I call a platform of my micro synergy base. The reason you can switch and you're still getting these benefits is that they have at the base, they all have Brahmi, passion flower, cacao, dates, and lion's mane, which we use a concentrated form of lion's mane. And lion's mane is well known for neurogenesis, helping to build brain cells. Passion flower is a general, not only is it a synergist for psilocybin, but it's also really a general nervine mellower. And the Brahmi, also known as Bacopa herb, is a really well-known herbal nootropic used for a lot of things, including improvement of memory and balancing of mood. So all of those things are there. And so then when we add these layers, in the case of the active, the ginseng and the cinnamon and the tulsi, it just gives it a direction. So it's like you can take a single herb, but sometimes if you don't tell it where you want it to go, it doesn't know. So you have to give it friends that are going to kind of walk with it on the journey. So, I mean, I consider like the process of composing a formula very similar to composing a song. You're trying to create a feeling, you're trying to invoke a specific story when you're putting together a formula.
I love that. I love that. And flavor, right? Like all of these yummy spices really make this product unique in its flavor. And I think it's very complimentary, not just in coffee, but say if you're trying to cut back on coffee, chai is my new favorite other, elixir. I love to make a chai motivate now, or hot chocolate, or I'm now putting it in my oatmeal and I'm sneaking it into my daughter's oatmeal because I always was putting a ton of cinnamon in anyway. We did have a question coming from Kathy, which was, what are the ingredients in the mushroom tincture, which I believe you just covered, but maybe you could go back a little and just maybe talk a little bit more about lion's mane itself. Why did you choose that particular mushroom as your base and say not reishi or not, one of the other popular functional mushroom supplements? Why lion's mane?
Okay, well, lion's mane is amazing to begin with. It's been shown to help prevent Alzheimer's. It's really the neurogenesis pieces, the all the studies that have been shown to regrow nerve tissue. To me, this is very exciting. Lion's mane is kind of awesome to just all over. We don't use whole lion's mane, a 1-to-1, because you need a lot more of it. So you'd never get enough in one of our doses. So we use an 8-to-1 lion's mane. One of the benefits of that is that some of the harder to digest components are not there, and you get all these lovely brain boosting benefits. So you get more of the brain boosting as opposed to the immune benefits, which you also get with the whole lion's mane. So specifically working on the brain aspect, what we really want is to nourish the brain tissue, nourish the nervous system tissue, so that you're not just taking a Band-Aid. It's not just, you take it and it's good for that day, but over time, it's going to build up and really start changing the way that your brain functions. So yeah, the lion's mane is in there for that reason. Why not reishi? I'm just a really honest and transparent person. So I'm going to tell you that I tried to put reishi in it. And the reason that I didn't put reishi in it is because reishi has this really weird thing that happens when you mix it, is that if you overmix it, it gels. That's it. So reishi is actually in our stacking powders. It is in our stacking powders. We love reishi. It doesn't formulate well in a rasayana capacity, in this liquid capacity. It just becomes this sort of like gloopy stuff. You can't really work with it.
Well, that's really good information, and I definitely would not have known that. And that is a great segue, as we do want to talk a little bit about your stacking powders, as they will be available at Irie Bliss, hopefully as soon as next week. Maybe, right? Week or two.
Hopefully.
We're not rushing anything because Andrea and I are very much on the same page about finding this work-life balance. And that's why I've really enjoyed working with you, because I think we're both very honest. And I think we've both, how long have you actually been working on Mycrodrops? Like how many years in are you now into this project?
I started in 2019.
Okay. So yeah, so I started
I started like the company of Mycrodrops in 2019. Working on it as a company. These formulas I started working on in 2017. And so it's actually been a minute as I've gone through this process, and we established as a company in early 2020, and then didn't launch until June of 2022.
Okay, so what came first, the stacking powders or the elixirs? Which did you release first?
The Elixhers. Yeah, the Elixhers are our kind of OG product. We didn't know what was going to happen in the psychedelic space. We didn't know what was going to be available, what we were going to be able to make. So we actually consistently and always have lots of products in research and development, mostly because it's kind of, like I said, my therapy to do that. And so the stacking powders came second when I realized so many people wanted to microdose. They were just so interested, and they didn't know what to do with the bag of mushrooms that had been sitting in their, special box for like 2 years, which was honestly mostly what I was coming across. Because I can't say, hey, go obtain psychedelic mushrooms. I can't help you with that. I can't lead you to that. Like, that's not something I can legally do. But what I can do is tell you, hey, if you happen to have these at your house, I'm going to show you how to make stacked, perfectly formulated capsules at home. So I made these stacking powders that all you have to do is read the little chart on the back. I think I actually have one. I was going to show you one if this is being, since we're videoing. So I put a little chart on the back of these things. Oh, and of course I picked the one that didn't have the chart on it. So I have these like nice little sachets of powder. And so all you do is you empty this entire sachet into a bowl. You add 10 grams of mushrooms, say for your standard dosing of 100 milligram capsules. You mix the powders and you cap them in 00 capsules. We carry everything that's necessary to make them. And we put it together in kits. And in the case of these being Irie Bliss, like it's really awesome because all you'll have to do is pick up a sachet. I know you have your mushrooms sitting at home in your sacred box and waiting for a special time. Some of you do. What you end up doing is weighing out the amount that you want. But I say 100 milligrams is a pretty standard dose. So when you do that, you're going to weigh out your 10 grams. We have these on our website as far as like how to do the dosing. It's really easy. So all you're doing is mixing it together, capping it with your little capping machine, and you're done. It's a really nice way to save money and also bring the medicine, kind of have a more of a personal connection with it. You can buy microdoses, right? People buy them on Instagram. It's a terrible idea to do that.
Don't buy your drugs.
You're almost definitely going to get scammed out of your money. If you don't get scammed out of your money, you're probably going to get something that is misdosed, has really wildly fluctuating amounts of mushrooms, cap to cap. This is the biggest problem. So I hear people saying like, I got this 100 milligram dose and I feel like I'm tripping, or I got this 100 milligram dose and there's just like nothing in it. Well, if you have a capsule, if somebody gives you a capsule and you can see space in that capsule, that's a good indication that that's not a properly filled capsule. If you can't just like pinch it shut and it's completely filled, it's not a properly filled capsule. In fact, there's such a big margin of error from capsule to capsule that you will find that like one day microdosing might be the best thing that ever happened to you, and the next day you might regret doing it. And that's why I recommend either making your own or sourcing them from a company or a person that you trust that you really, really trust. When you make them at home, you've got you that you can trust. And so as long as you follow the directions, rip the sachet, use 00 capsules, pack them super tight, you have really flawless stacked capsules, which we make in the same amount of lines as we do the Elixhers. So we do a microactive for people that need the get up and go. We do microflow for your focus and your reduced intensity. And we do a microcalm version we call Zen for the more anxious feelings and grounding the body. Yeah.
Now, don't you have a stacking powder that you encourage people to take actually before bed?
Yeah, I almost forgot about that. I was like,
that was totally new to me. I had never associated microdosing with sleep because generally I become a little bit more stimulated, focused, and energized, so what is in the formula that's helping with sleep?
Yeah, I've got a formula called Dream. And I did it because for whatever reason, I was drawn to take my microdoses at night for a while. And I heard more and more that people were drawn to this, especially the people who, for whatever reason, were just really nervous about taking them during the day. Maybe they didn't want to take a microdose and go to work. Even though it's sub-perceptual, people new to that just didn't want to do that. Maybe they didn't want to take a microdose and have full parenting responsibilities, except for, once again, if it's really a microdose, it won't interrupt that. Or they're trying to lucid dream. They're trying to kind of, do some dream work, spiritual dream work. So in that formula, I put passion flower. There's reishi in all of these lion's mane and reishi in all of our stacking powders. Cool. And this formula has skull cap and passion flower, which when together really make a nice gentle sedative sleeping formula. Which is really helpful. They also have ginger just because they are part of the microcalm line. So help to, the digestion part of it. Reishi is very calming as well. So just like I was saying before, it matters what you put it with, right? So you've got this reishi and lion's mane, and when you put it in concert with the skull cap and the passion flower and the ginger, its affinity is going to be to relax you and lull you to sleep. It's not the same as like eating a whole bunch of valerian root and feeling groggy. It's not the same as overdoing your kava and feeling a little drunk. We're talking about like something that's going to want you to naturally fall asleep. So it's not going to interfere with your ability to dream. Because what we don't want to do with this formula is to like knock you out and then have you just go into blackness. This formula really is for healthy sleep.
Well, that's the one I'm most excited to try. I can't wait to get my hands on some samples. Now, I did just want to bring up that you are hailing from the state of Oregon, and I know this has been a big year for Oregon as far as the future and the potential for using, natural plant medicine, psilocybin, as part of, mental health treatment protocols and trauma therapies, and, people suffering from PTSD and various other ailments, from chronic fatigue to cancer, and so I'm very, very excited, and I'm very hopeful about the future. So do these new regulations mean anything for your future in your company? Do you have any plans to sort of open any kind of practice where you would be actively able at some point down the road, where you be able to get a license effectively to dispense psilocybin? I mean, is that the future?
Yeah, and honestly, it was always in the plan. That was always part of what we planned to do, because we realized that giving people extra steps is not ideal. People like to make things easy, and so yes, we are eventually going to have psilocybin infused versions of our elixirs, as well as other types of already infused, ready to go products. Right now, where it stands in Oregon is a little tricky for the microdosing community, because the law was really written for full dose macrodose therapeutic. Well, I'm not going to say therapeutic is the wrong word, because it's not for treating anything medical. It is for exploring with a licensed guide any number of things. That might be trauma healing, that might simply be creativity, that might just be looking through the psyche or understand. I mean, some of these trips are going to be group trips outside. They're not all lay down, deep internal work that this was approved for. They didn't put a lot of provisions in the bill for microdosing, which, as most of, if you've ever microdosed, you know that like you do it at home. Right now, what they wrote in was that you can go to a service center, get your microdose, and leave within 30 minutes. So, okay. So for people who are very much want to be like 100% within the letter of the law, that's the way they can microdose here. And we will apply for our psilocybin license in the next few months, so that we can get our products into some of these service centers. That being said, we opted out of the beginning, first flush of licenses, because we want to see how it rolls out. Having been in the cannabis industry previously, seeing when legality just first starts to hit, what also happens is that all the smallest businesses get knocked out really fast, because what you notice is that as regulations change, it just takes really deep pockets to keep up until things settle down. And so we're just in the kind of watch and check it out, be a periphery support to the industry, create formulas that really make microdosing work better. And then we do have some one-on-one consultations available for people who want to know more. So eventually we're going to have infused versions of a lot of things that we make, so that you can have a one, kind of all-in-one thing that you can use.
This is amazing. I have to say, like, I mean, I'm 44 years old, and I don't know if I ever thought I would see this day. I have to say. I mean, I don't know. I think I knew it with cannabis, but I think like the trajectory of like entheogens and how quickly things have seemed to change over the past 5 years. I'm not really sure if it was sped up by COVID. I'm not really sure if it's just this culmination of the collective kind of fed up with the current systems and patriarchy, and we want to rewire our brains. And I think there's also a big movement for people to want to see what they're capable of, and I think we've been dummied down and dulled down, with the American diet and just the lack of community and spirituality in a lot of circles. And there's just been a big kind of return to so many things. And I think that the mushrooms just really are just such an integral part of that. And, Andrea, I wanted to say, I met you at a conference, and we were just sitting in the audience, but I hear that you are going to be a panelist at some upcoming conferences. Would you like to plug where people can find you?
Yeah, I'm going to be at Convergence in LA. That's at the end of March. I think it starts the 28th, 20th through the 3rd of April. And I'm going to be on the Oregon panel, and we're going to be talking about all this because I've been on a community action group helping to rewrite the laws to make them more friendly and more, usable. And so I'm going to be on an Oregon panel down there. We also have a table at Psychedelic Science 2023 in June, which is going to be huge for anybody who wants to go in Colorado. It's going to be so much fun. These conferences are all over the place. Like I met Sandy at a conference that's very business focused. There was a lot of swanky businessmen with their fancy shoes on, with their deep pockets ready to go. And then I went to Sisters in Psychedelics in Vancouver, and it was like a real femme focused, like feminist beat, like nice, nurturing community, like just all that vibe. And then there's everything really in between, from the very spiritually focused to the very medically focused. So I'll be at Convergence. I'll be at Psychedelic Science 2023. And I believe there's like one other. I'm probably will be speaking at a different one in LA, but I'm actually blanking on the name of that one at the moment. But yeah, there's just a lot going on. This community is really ramping up, and like Sandy mentioned, I do believe COVID, Alex, to the forefront, mostly because we all had a lot more time alone with ourselves than we were used to. And we had all this time. There were reports in 2002 saying antidepressants were prescribed. So zoom all the way to 2021, and you went up 21% in just a few months of the pandemic. People did that, and not everybody was happy with the results. A lot of people found that it was really hard to connect with people, that they couldn't orgasm anymore, and they were like, hey, that's not what I signed up for. I just wanted to be not as sad. And it turns out that there's other ways to do that. And like, from an Ayurvedic perspective, like we don't plug psychedelics all the time. Because why? Because in the yogic community, they teach practices to reach these states in and of yourself through meditation. And that is absolutely possible. It's absolutely something your body's capable of. Your body even makes DMT. So your body is capable of it. And when the world is this crazy, when you're home and you're parenting kids at home and you're trying to deal with all this stuff, psychedelics are a wonderful bridge, because they really do, they sort of give you that auto meditation feeling where you can kind of snap into the same types of insights and the same types of observer behavior that you can from really good meditation. And while we're normalizing things like ADHD and mental health concerns, just knowing that like for certain people, meditation isn't step one. It's just really hard for people to do a step one into like 15 minutes of seated meditation. Whereas if you give them a microdose, oftentimes they realize what it is in their lifestyle that's keeping them from healing. Sometimes people who have ADHD are also super addicted to their phones. And sometimes they realize like what a circus they have in their hand, because they literally take their microdose and they go, wait a minute, why am I picking up my phone right now? Do I actually need to look at that? Like, you actually get this moment like between stimulus and response to question yourself. We just weren't questioning ourselves before we were forced to question ourselves by not even being able to leave our houses. And now that we're there and we realize like it's okay not to be okay, and it's okay to like explore the deeper waters of what's going on, and happiness isn't actually the natural state of humanity all the time. We actually want to be able to deal with negative feelings when they come up. We don't want to just push them away or pretend we live in sunshine and roses all the time. That's not realistic. What's realistic is to be able to like see contrast and appreciate it. That day wasn't great. This day's real great. And I really appreciate this real great day.
I love that. I have found that the microdosing makes me feel more grateful, and maybe it is the power of the pause, you know, whether you're parenting. And you know, I found myself a little bit more playful, and you know, going out into the Rockland Town Forest just felt more whimsical and magical. And you know, I started to notice like, oh wow, like other people were out here actually like leaving like gnomes and fairies and making signs like for each other with positive affirmations. And I just started really like wanting to participate in that more. And I'm like, well, we're going to go and look, we're going to go grab some of those, you know, our old trolls and toys that we're not using anymore. And we're going to brighten up some other little kid's day. And, you know, just really like connecting in nature in this like public forest was really fun, you know, when I did it in conjunction with microdosing. And I mean, I'm sure I still would have had fun, but I often describe it as if, like I put on a pair of glasses for the first time and it was like, I could see like a little bit clearer, you know, and maybe, you know, did things with a little bit more intention. And I totally agree with the phone and how mushrooms in general and psychedelics in general tend to make anything that's part of the system or the structure seem completely ridiculous, whether that's a phone, a TV, the bright colors of a cereal box. You know, just how like cartoony in general, like we've made this whole just life and trying to like sugarcoat things and get through it in a lot of ways, you know? So yeah, it helps me like really face a lot of my emotions head on. It certainly helps with communication. It helps me be more empathic. So again, we're not encouraging that you participate in you know seeking out illicit substances. However, there are a lot of support groups nowadays. There's certainly legal pathways to obtain you know ketamine treatment, which is not a natural psychedelic. However, sadly, you know, until there is a prescription for mushrooms, and you know, you kind of talked a little bit about like the businessmen and the loafers and then the sister circles, you know, I think that there's room for everybody in this future. Sadly, I think we kind of need the you know some of the more stringent protocols for folks who are just so used to having a doctor say this is how many pills you need, this is how many times a day you need to take it, and then to get it covered by insurance and to make it accessible and affordable for people is one issue. But then the sacred plant medicine circles and the connection that brings, you know, when you sit with plant medicine in ceremony, you know, is obviously a beautiful model. However, not everybody can afford that, you know, to leave the country and get the plane ticket and go to a legal place. However, if you know, if you're at a crossroads in your life, like Andrea mentioned, and you're, you know, really considering, you know, do I go the route of big pharma or do I maybe explore some of these other natural options? You can certainly reach out to us. We have community members who run trip sitter networks locally here. I'm sure Andrea probably has similar resources out on the other side of the country. So, you know, we just want to be resources. I've also had the same amount of experience with psychedelics. Andrea, I was, you know, very young when I found them, but I think that they found me for a very positive reason. I mean, it changed my life in one of the best ways possible. I was really not going down a great path. I was super depressed. You know, Kurt Cobain died and Jerry Garcia died in the same year. That was really rough for me because I still didn't know if I was a hippie or a goth or a, you know what I mean? I was still trying to find myself, and everybody
We're the
that ever
same age,
I
girl.
ever
We're the
loved was
same
dying.
age.
Say that again.
I said we're the same age. I totally. I think we were we were there together.
Yeah. So again, I'm just very grateful that I didn't find opiates, you know what I mean, in the cabinet. And it was just, it was just a piece of paper that changed my life. But anyway, Andrea, I think we're right around like the 45-minute mark here. So I think that this is a good, digestible, beautiful podcast. And if anybody has any questions, like, again, you can certainly reach out to us. And if you would like to follow Andrea on her social media, she's on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all of the platforms, and she is at Micro is spelt with a Y, Mycrodrops, right, Andrea? And we do have that $10 off coupon, so it'd be Shroom, I think it's Shroom 10 or Shrooms 10. I think it's Shroom 10, but you could always try both if that doesn't work. But Shroom 10 for $10 off, and I think we're going to run that until, probably going to extend it to the end of February, because I think this time of year, especially with the lack of vitamin D that we're all getting, any of these adaptogens are going to be a great addition to trying to kind of move your body, move your butt, get your resolutions, keep your resolutions, right? Any final thoughts? I'm so glad that this
Yeah,
connection
just final thoughts.
maintained.
Oh, I'm so glad. And just some final thoughts is that you don't have to be microdosing in order to take microdrops. I take them every day. That's really what they were designed to do. They're designed to be taken every day on micro and non micro days, or when you're not microdosing at all. And some people, when they're making that first transition from antidepressants, if they're in a taper program with their doctor, it's good to just go ahead and start on the microdrops. They're not going to be able to sing at their full loudness until you're fully clear of those other medications, but they will start helping you and help bridge that gap. And if you're just somebody that wants to add adaptogens and stress modifying herbs into your diet, these are a really nice way to do it. They taste good. They're good in coffee. They're good in tea. They're delicious in chai. They can just be in hot water or in like a like alternative milk concoction, like the coconut milk one Sandy mentioned. So don't be afraid to try them, even if you're not like already microdosing. It's not necessary. They're beautiful adaptogens and nootropics on their own. And you may find that even after you've been microdosing a while, you keep the microdrops and you stop microdosing. It happens all the time. And it's, happens to me for periods at a time.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit similar to CBD and THC. I often will have people start on CBD for a little while if they're thinking of taking something more psychoactive to just kind of help balance it when they do. And I found that with your formulas, I don't know if the lion's mane has like built up in my system, but I have halved the milligram of microdose that I take because I was noticing that my typical 100 milligram was actually affecting me like it was just making me a little bit too energetic or kind of like speedy where I almost just felt like if I had taken like I don't know, an extra cup of coffee or too much espresso or something, just a little bit hyper and less focused. And I want to take micro doses to be focused. So it made me almost scattered. So I just was able to dial it back, which who doesn't love that? Because that's going to save you money in the long run.
Great.
Well, Andrea, thank you so much. This has been so lovely. And I did pop up the Shroom 10. Thank you, Amy, for keeping track of me and babysitting me. And yeah, we love you so much, Andrea. We love what you're doing. Thank you for continuing to help mankind feel better. And I can't wait to see what's next for you. And I might try to I'm kind of like a super fan. So I might stalk you. I might end up at one of those conferences.
Same. One of Irie Bliss, one of my favorite companies. And so definitely go and check out all the offerings because they're super curated and like you care more than almost any retail store owner I've ever met, which makes me just absolutely love working with you. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
All right. Thank you. Have a blessed day, everybody. We will see you back here tomorrow for Acceleration Breathwork with Matt at 11 a.m. Have a great night.
Great.